Hey y'all, this is Victory Gardens by Rain, and I'm Rain, and I wanted to welcome you guys to my garden. Today I was sitting out here and I started pruning some tomatoes, and I thought maybe you guys would like to know how to do that, and I would like to show you how I do mine. So I prune my tomatoes a couple of different ways, but today I'm going to teach you how to do single stemming. Now, before you do this technique, you need to know what type of tomato you have. Meaning, do you have a determinate tomato or do you have an indeterminate tomato? And the differences in that is that determinate tomatoes, which are also labeled as patio or bush tomatoes, they only grow to a certain size and that's it. And they only produce a certain amount of fruit and that's it. But with indeterminate tomatoes, which means they grow for an indeterminate amount of time, essentially meaning forever, and they get massive and they get big. You need to be able to prune them to keep the health of the plant and to focus the plant's energy on creating fruit versus trying to grow big and strong. Okay. So today we're going to be pruning indeterminate tomatoes, and I'm going to be doing the single stemming string technique, which means that I have established a trellis, which this is just a U-post or T-post, and I've taken old bamboo stakes that I just kind of had laying around, and I use it as the top tier right here, and then I'm actually going to take string and tie it or loop it around my tomato to pull it off of the ground. Now this particular variety is called the Goliath. I was wooed by that variety name because of the Bible story about David and Goliath. That's one that I truly love about the underdog. And it's rumored to have massive, big, huge red fruits on it, big, huge tomatoes. And I just think that's awesome, and I'm excited and ready to do it. However, this is a big, huge plant, and I don't have a big, huge space, so I need to prune it in such a way that it'll fit in my space, it'll get along with its friends, but still be able to do the job that God designed it to do, which is produce huge, massive sized tomatoes. So these little bamboo sticks, they are too small for the job that I'm doing for the life of this plant once it starts producing fruit. But because this is what I have on hand right now, and it really needs to happen so that my tomato doesn't come down with tomato sickness, I just grabbed what I had. But I will eventually be replacing this with either a larger PVC pipe, or a 1x wood or a big stick. I don't know, wherever I can find that's sturdy, because tomato plants are heavy, and especially having like 1 pound tomatoes on a tomato thing, this isn't going to be big enough. But I wanted to show you with what I had, so that you can walk alongside of me in my journey of watching this plant come to fruition. So the reason why I prune the way that I do and so heavily is because of disease control, fruit production, and space management. So there are several reasons why you want to prune tomatoes, especially indeterminate tomatoes. I already mentioned one, and that was the space. When you have a large indeterminate tomato and you're not controlling the growth of that tomato, it could inhibit you from utilizing the space that you have in your garden to the fullest intent. And so I really like to prune mine because I'm in a small space. Now, the other reason, and the number one reason in my opinion, that you should prune your tomatoes, at least from the bottom up, is to keep the tomato disease of blight down. So I live in Georgia, zone 7B, 8A-ish, is debatable. And we are in a very hot, humid environment. And I also have a space where my garden is in a flood zone, which creates a whole lot more humidity, and I'm on the south side. So I have a lot of factors that can contribute to disease on my tomatoes, because they are very susceptible to the heat and the humidity. They don't like to be wet. They don't like to have their leaves wet. They like to dry out between waterings a little bit in order to grow. Tomatoes are incredible plants to grow where I'm at.
but you have to make sure that you pay attention to the environment. Essentially what we're doing is we're going to completely eliminate the foliage from at least the wrist to the elbow. I always say that because where I live, when the rain hits the soil, which is where the blight lives, it'll bounce back up and then it hits the tip of the leaves. And so then it creates a sickness. So now the plant essentially has the disease on it. So I combat that 2 different ways, and that's with pruning and it's also with mulching. So with the pruning, which is what we're talking about today, I am pretty brutal for about a good foot, maybe 18 inches off the bottom of my indeterminate tomatoes. So this is how I start out. I'm going to start off with just taking off the full bottom parts of the foliage. So when you do that, you want to cut as closely to your main stem as you can. Whoa! I'm probably just going to take, so now you can see really good the main stem of your tomato, and then generally you want to follow the main leader. And right here, this is the main lead, and then this was a sucker, which I'll explain about that in just a few minutes. But now it has grown so much that this is now a lead, and this is now a lead. So I don't want to eliminate that because it may shock my plant too much. So I'm just going to kind of pause there and just clip off any foliage that's pointing towards the ground or that can potentially touch the ground. So after I prune from the bottom up so that the rain doesn't splash back tomato sickness onto the plant, what I'll do is I'll look at how the plant has grown. So it's in a Y right now, and what I want to do at this point is I want to create as much airflow as I possibly can between this plant. So I look for any of the leaf branches that are either touching each other or facing towards each other or touching a sister plant, and then I'll just prune those down. So for this particular instance, this guy right here, he looks like he's a little too close to the ground, so I'm gonna go ahead and snip him off. Love you, bye. And then this one's touching this plant, so I will get rid of that right there. And actually, now that I'm looking, these are blossom drops, so it doesn't even really matter, so I'm gonna get that. So these guys touch, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that taken care of as well. So this is the point where I would go ahead and string up the main leads. And so when I say string up, that really quite simply means that I tie a string to the top part of my support and I bring it down and I wrap it around each limb of this tomato so that it holds it upright, but it doesn't choke it out because it's lightly twisted. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take string and I'm going to tie it from the top of the support and wrap it around each lead of this tomato gently. So I take my string and I will pull it up, kind of get like a guesstimate of how much I need. Pull a little bit more for tie-in room. I'm going to snip it. And I'll go ahead and tie it up here. And this is just regular garden twine. It's nothing special, nothing fancy. And then I just have it come down and I'll take my main lead here. So I'll pull it taut to the part that I want to start to wrap around. And you'll just kind of figure that out as you learn to do this technique. And then I just kind of wrap it a few times to get started and kind of tie it out. You see how I did that? And then what I'll do is I'll continue to wrap my tomato. You can be a little bit tough. These guys are fine. Around the string. Just like that. Okay, I do want to take a moment and explain why I do not tie these off. So I do not take and tie this in a nice little bow. And I do that for a reason, and it's because as this tomato grows, it will send signals out, and this will loosen up if it needs to, and it'll continue to adjust. So now that you're tying up, you'll be able to really kind of see the picture of what your plant's going to be doing in this technique. So you can go ahead and prune along things as you go. But first I want to show you this right here. See, this is your main lead and this is your leaf branch. This right here was called the armpit or the Y. Is where the suckers grow. And you want to make sure you keep those cleared out because they actually confuse the plant as to where to produce fruit. So you just it just takes unnecessary energy. So we'll just kind of look through and see what we like and then just twist it around. It's super easy. This is a really good option for an economical choice. But I really like it because it's super simple, especially when you have a bunch of tomato in a row. Now, this is another sucker that has grown too big that I didn't get a chance because I haven't pruned it yet. And I actually left this one because I was afraid that the plant would go into shock and I would actually top my tomato, which means you hack off the top of the tomato. But because these are all fruit bearing and strong, and this one has a little bit of blossoms on it, that's going to be too many. And this is where your own discernment is going to have to come in about your space and your direction. If I were to leave this lead on this tomato, I could if I wanted to, but I don't have enough space personally. So I'm going to actually make the decision to cut that off to keep just 2 leads so that my plant can focus on fruit production. So guys, that's about essentially what I do when I trellis my tomatoes on the string technique. The last thing that I do though, before I finish up, is I want to make sure that now that we have all this space cleared out under the tomato, and I've checked for disease, which I'll cover that in a different video, but and it's nice and clear, I want to make sure that I go ahead and pull out what weeds that I can see. And note, see, I need to refresh this mulch, and then I want to fertilize. Now I fertilize with fish emulsion because I feel safe with that. Like it's kind of dummy proof. You can, mix it a little dollop to 2 gallons of things, but it doesn't burn your plant. So I feel very comfortable fertilizing with it once a week, or whenever I feel like my plants need an extra vitamin shot or something like that. But what we did is we just shocked this plant. We took away half of its structure, and so I want to make sure after doing that I fertilize it really well so that it can put production into healing itself, and I'm giving it the resources to do so. I'll just pour around the surface and make sure I am watering it like I would regularly. So there you go. Thanks for visiting me today in my garden. I hope you guys learned a little bit, had a bit of fun, and I hope you have a blessed day.